Hello, I'm Mandisa Johnson with Atlanta Film and TV. Today, we are having an updated conversation with Susan G. Reid. Susan is a nationally recognized director, writer, producer, coach, and teacher of actors. Reid is an assistant professor in TV film directing for Georgia State University School of Film, Media, and Theater, and is an active member of the arts community, where she is a leading industry expert and consultant in entertainment, having worked extensively as both an agent and a casting director. Hi, Susan. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. I'm so happy to be here with you again.
Yay, I'm excited. Thank you for
Me
joining us
too.
again. So, we had our initial conversation in 2021. What has happened in your career since then?
I was trying to remember where I was. So I think the biggest change is that when we talked in 2021, I'm pretty sure that I was still in my position as a professor of practice
Yes.
at the university. And so I was really working a lot with acting and coaching then, but also really working as a producer for the theater at the university and really getting sort of systems in place to run that theater program. And then I stepped away from that and moved into a new position, which is my assistant professor position, which is a tenure track position, but then it's also specific to production. So I'm not working under the theater umbrella specifically anymore. I'm really just working in film primarily, which was kind of a natural progression. Certainly I started and I will always love the theater and I will always continue to be a theater director and do that as well. But just had a calling within the department in Georgia State, particularly to sort of make that transition, and was fortunate that I was able to switch into that other position for the university. So it's been really exciting and just fun to be in a new place again with the same faculty, but working in a different capacity with them, and also with the students working in a different capacity. So I went from some of the classes are the same, some of them have changed for me, but now focused really more on the film industry, focused more on our directors and teaching our directors what they need to do to get out there and be successful in our industry.
Well, thank you for sharing. Yes, I did notice that you were no longer doing the was it the
Professor of practice. Mhm.
practice? Yes. And I was just kind of wondering. So thank you for answering that. So what do you believe is the most important thing an acting student should learn in their first year of training?
That is the best question. I love that question so much. So to me, my definition for acting is playing the role of a truthful and honest character in an imaginary set of circumstances. And I say that's my definition, but then I always have to put like an asterisk at the end of it and go, but that's the world's definition for acting, right? So playing the role of a truthful and honest character in an imaginary set of circumstances. So the focus really being on that truth and that authenticity. And that's one of the hardest things for actors is to kind of find that, particularly new actors. And so it really requires learning a set of acting techniques, learning about the craft and technique of acting so that you can kind of figure out how to navigate that as a person. Because as an actor, you've got this is the tool, right?
Right.
It's your body, is your mind, is your experience, all of that you're bringing to every single role. And so you got to figure out how to use that craft to create those different characters. So I think just making sure that you're living authentically in the imaginary circumstances of any role you're asked to create is probably the most important thing for an actor to learn in any kind of intro class. Are they going to learn that in an intro class? Yes. Are they going to be able to apply that? Probably not, because it's just too much,
Mhm.
right? You know that having spoken to countless actors on this on your program as well, that it's a lifelong journey, right?
Mhm.
Like anything that we do, if you commit to acting, then you're committing to that, to continue that training and to continue working on getting better at that over the long haul with both your life experience and then the additional training that you get. So that's probably where I would say is the starting point.
Thank you for
Is
sharing
finding
that
that.
and
Yeah, yeah,
saying that
yeah.
it's a lifelong journey because so many people that I have met thinks that it just happens overnight, and I'm like, no, it's not. something that happens overnight. You literally have to continue. It's something that you continually are learning at and perfecting. And I always have to say, like, hey, an actor like Denzel Washington still he may not be in an acting classes, but he has a coach. So
He's getting
it
coached.
is lifelong learning, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I always say, if you want to make it in this industry, you don't want it to happen overnight. You want to enjoy the journey.
I think that's so true and such a great point. And it's difficult because particularly for students, working in an actual program at a university, they're thinking, "Oh, I'm going to study for this 4 years or however long it takes them to get that degree, and they're going to get out and they're going to walk out with this set of skills." Yes, that's true. But the set of skills as far as acting doesn't just end there. It's all
Mhm.
about, what's the next training, whether or not that's on set training, whether or not you actually get cast and you're learning from that experience, whether or not that is workshops that you're taking with casting directors to get more knowledge, whether or not that's a private coach that you employ to help you, or whether or not that's, again, ongoing classes. But, it's very logical if you think about the fact that musicians, athletes, they don't, you don't pick up your instrument once a month and practice it and think that you're going to go to the symphony and play
Right.
any more than, Serena Williams was like, I think I'm going to take a week off. I don't know. I don't know about practicing tennis. Do I really have to go do that? Yeah, you do to get better. So it's that sort of ongoing learning, life learning that's part of the process.
Thank you. So, how do you foster an environment of growth and constructive criticism in your class?
Yes, that's also, your questions are so good. It's so
Thank
much
you.
fun to answer these questions too, I have to say.
Thank you.
So I think that that's something that I work on as a director because I talk a lot about wanting to create a certain culture on set when I'm working with actors and when I'm working with the crew. And that's similar to what I try to do in my classes. I'm fortunate that I have been teaching and directing for a long time now. So that means, and around for a minute, right? Just in life. So I think that I know that you understand this too, that the longer we're out there in the world, I'd like to think that we build that experience and that loosens us up a little bit. That opens us up to some flexibility and not feeling like, a term that I'll often use is, I try not to hold on too tight. When I hold on too tight, that means that I'm trying to control circumstances, some of which I can control, some of which I can't control, right? So
Hmm.
what I'm always trying to do is find that balance. So I try to lead with a full heart, and the knowledge that I love what I do. I feel very passionately about it. And I want to bring that energy and enthusiasm to the people that I work with to try and bring the best out of them. Inherent in bringing out the best in anyone is the fact that you're going to get feedback and you're going to hear about that performance and get response. Sometimes that's going to be or can be thought of as negative. I think it's just part of the growth process. But again, I feel like it's all in the way that you present that information. So, what I try to do is just let everybody always know that suggestions I'm making are ones that I'm making for the betterment of the class, the betterment of whatever film that I'm working on, and that we're working together to do that. And if somebody also having an open door at all times, right, and saying, "Hey, if you've got a question, what do? You reach out to me. If you've got a concern, what do? You reach out to me." So I think accessibility becomes a really important part of that, building that culture as well, is saying,
Hmm.
"Hey, I'm here to support you." And everybody wants the best fill in the blank, the best experience in this class, the best production. If we're working on a film, we all want the same things. We just got to make sure that we're working together in the best way. And again, I think that starts with the instructor, the professor in the classroom. I think that starts with the director. And I'm always going to try and lead by example.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not the best person to give construction criticism, but then I have to think that it's going to help me in the long run. Be
Absolutely.
better at what it is that I'm trying to do. So, thank you for sharing that. So,
Absolutely. And I
Uh-huh.
was just going to say, there's also a balance, right? So,
Mhm.
what I try to do is, if there is something that's more constructive criticism, I try to balance that out with something that I thought that was a real positive, so that there's a little bit of both of those things that you can lean into, so you're not walking away from any given situation, particularly as an actor, because actors are putting themselves emotionally out there on the line. They're giving so much of themselves to play that role. So I try to be very cognizant in the dealings of that, and be really sympathetic and empathetic in the way that I speak to them and deal with those situations.
Thank you. What do you think is the biggest misconception newer actors have about acting when they enter the world of film and television?
You already referenced it, and I think you were right on, which is that it doesn't happen overnight, that none of it does. When we see these huge stars that are making millions of dollars and doing film after film, or doing these really exciting episodic shows, and again crafting these amazing careers, we tend to forget that at one point they were starting out in a class as a new acting student, that they were doing countless auditions to get there, right? That it's not, it just, the stories of when things just happen like that are so very rare, that you've really just kind of got to focus on, getting in there and doing your work. So I think that as an artist, you've got to decide that you want to be in this business for the long haul. And that means that you're going to have to adapt. And adaptability becomes one of the most important skills for anybody that's working in the industry to have, because nothing is consistent about our industry, as we have seen. And we'll talk more about that today, I know, but it's always ever changing. It's going to constantly change. So it's tough, because so often it's, oh, I'm going to figure out how to do a really great self tape. Okay, until the dynamics of that change, until some of the rules of that change, until a different casting director needs something else, until you have a different role that you're not feeling as comfortable with. It's always changing. So a
Mhm.
lot of the training piece of it is connected to that notion of how good are you at that adaptability, and at that growth and that change that's naturally going to happen in what you do.
Right. I have a similar story. It with like journalism.
Mhm.
Back in like I think it was 2000, the year I graduated from
Mhm.
undergrad. I was doing an internship with my uncle who had a radio show. He went, I think he went on a cruise, if I remember correctly. He came back, show was gone, and it went
Wow.
to believe it was Tom Joyner. And he was
Okay.
telling me the importance of being multifaceted in the world of multimedia, because one day you could have a show, next day you could not. So I do know he was also he is a motivational speaker, so he had a speaking engagements, and he was an author of books. So it's kind of the same. It's always changing, not just having, just being talented and acting, doing other things as well, like the directing and the producing and writing is very, very important. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a break, but we'll be right back.
Let's sit down for a meal and conversation. All are invited to the table to hear the message of inspiration and hope from small business owners across the country as we celebrate diversity in culture and cuisine. Welcome to Food Coma, Conversations Over Meals in America, hosted by Cynthia McAllister. Do you need exposure for your business, brand, or organization? If so, let Food Coma, Conversations Over Meals in America radio show help you fulfill your need for more exposure, more business, and return on investment. Connect with me at admin@qualitysap.com today. Welcome back to Conversations with Atlanta's Movers and Shakers. I am your host, Mandisa Johnson. Today we are having a conversation with director, writer, producer, and teacher of actors, Susan G. Reid. How do you help students develop resilience, especially when faced with rejection or failure in the industry?
Again, another great question. I think one of the most important things is what we've already alluded to a little bit earlier in this conversation, which is not focusing on only one thing.
Mhm.
Uh, A few things I could say. First of all, I think it's hard to be a successful artist with a big A. And you know, I like to talk about artists with a big A because we all wear so many different hats in this business. You're never just doing one thing, you're always doing 10 things. That's just how it
Right.
keeps, right? Even talking about me, she's a director, she's a writer, she's a producer, she's a coach, she does all these things. Well, I love doing all those things, but I didn't just volunteer to do all of those things because I did
Hmm.
that partly because that was the adaptability piece of it. And being resilient is knowing that you've got to kind of uh, be willing to change and adjust according to what you need to do in the moment. So I think for actors, a lot of it can come down to, or anybody in the industry, not just actors, rather, um, figuring out what makes you really happy and what brings you joy. And
Hmm.
certainly my career and my work brings me joy, but I also have a lot of other things in my life that bring me joy. So I think if my career is the only thing I'm counting on to bring me joy, then I'm in trouble
Right. Yeah.
is a quick answer there, right? That can't be it. So certainly I understand that that can be, again, connected to things like, how do I pay my mortgage? How do I pay for my
Hmm.
groceries? I get that. That comes back to that sort of notion of you've got to be adaptable and you've got to have different resources. So if the only thing you're doing is acting, you're going to have to do something else besides that. You've got to decide what that is that will be okay with you, whether or not that is, working as a barista in a coffee shop and the socialization, being with people makes you happy and brings you some happiness. And that balances things out for you, helps pay your bills and whatever, whether or not you are an acting coach or you have a taping service or a flexible career where you work in tech on the computer and you can choose when you're working and you're at home a lot. So you can do that as well. So there are not very many people that do one single thing in the arts and that's all that they do.
Right.
Right. So the combination of those things, I think, is part of finding that happiness and dealing with the rejection too. Because if the only thing that you're focused on is the fact that you didn't book that last audition and now you've got this next one and you're super worried about whether or not you'll book that audition because otherwise, again, how will you pay for your bills? Then that becomes a problem for you. And I wish it didn't have to be that way. Right. I wish we were in circumstances, but that's really never been the way of the actor, regardless of how much work we have in the Southeast, in LA, in Chicago, in New York, wherever it is. That's just not how acting and performance works. And in general, most of the industry, a lot of the industry is that way. So you've got to have these other things that you can go to that will fill some of that void for you and fill some of that space. And again, also fill some of the void of you as the actor. Because if you don't book the role, then where are you going to put that artistic energy?
Mm.
Maybe that is in writing, or maybe that's in, visual arts and you like to paint on the side, whatever it is. You've got to seek out those things to try and balance it because dependent on the one thing is never going to be what will make you successful in our line of business.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. What projects are you currently producing?
So let's see, what am I currently working on? The big thing that I've got right now is I have just a couple of spaces left on my holistic Italy acting retreat that is in Umbria this summer from July 23rd to the 29th. We still, I think, have two more spaces in that. So taking a group of actors over there to the most beautiful location in the world in Umbria, to this estate there called Ciliano Alto, and spend the week talking, socializing, learning about acting. I coach there. We tape. I have created an acting technique based on the 30 years that I've been teaching, and so I teach that to the actors that come. They get side time in the pool. They get their own massage. They get this beautiful farm to table food that's presented to them. So Shine Retreats, and that retreat is a big part of what I'm working on right now, getting ready for that this summer. In addition to that, I am in post on one short film called Bicycle Face, which is a multimedia piece that where we shot a portion of it in real time with the most talented actors ever. Bethany Ann Lynn Mendenhall and Rob Mello were our two actors. We shot it back in January, and we are working in conjunction at GSU with the College of the Arts, where I teach, with Creative Media Industries Institute, and some folks there who are doing some motion capture and other things with that.
Oh,
And
okay. Okay.
yes, so it's going to be a multimedia piece. It's going to be very cool. And Bicycle Face is actually the title of the piece. It's a very short film. It'll probably be about 5 minutes total. And bicycle face was a real condition back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where women were out on their bikes, and men essentially started to associate that with women having too much power. And so they came up with this notion that bicycle face, when they rode their bike, they were getting aggravated and it was making them not good wives.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they started saying, beware of bicycle face. This was a real thing. You can do some
Oh, wow.
research. I know we say it now, and it's like, that sounds crazy, but I don't know. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in this world today. So at any rate, so Bicycle Face is a short film that we are still getting out of post. Then I have written a short film called In the Dirt, which is a sort of a conservation piece to some degree. And I'm trying to get the funding for that to be able to shoot that. And I'm not sure when I'm going to get that funding. I've been working on that for a minute. So doing that, and in development on a couple of full-length features, and some more shorts as well. So just doing a combination of film projects overall, while I'm doing the retreat thing and while I'm teaching as well.
Staying busy. I
Yeah.
do, I
Oh,
have,
and then my work with
uh,
Houghton Talent Agency. Sorry,
oh, okay. No, you're fine.
yes. Yes. So I also continue to work with Houghton Talent Agency, which is such a blessing to be able to talk to the actors that are repped there and just give them some advice about the industry.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So I do have a question. You said something about I was at the
Motion capture.
motion capture. So I have a friend who's also a mover and shaker, Joshua Leonard. I know he's been going over there and doing some motion capture stuff.
Sure.
He has an animation called it's Team Supreme.
Cool.
It is not like on TV. I don't understand why it's not, but it is an animation about children with special needs, but they have superpowers. And I
Oh,
told
cool.
him I was going to connect you all, but when you mentioned it, I was like, yes.
Need to
So,
remember.
yes, I'm going to have to make that connection. Really great person to connect with. So,
I
mhm.
would love that. And, Creative Media Industries Institute is a world-class facility with phenomenal, yes, there's just phenomenal equipment and a studio there and all sorts of really great things that as a faculty, I have access to that. But they also rent those spaces out to different companies and artists that come in and use it as well.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Can you share about your blog, Read for It?
Yes. So I keep my blog Read for It just kind of on the sidelines because I like it. It's more inspirational than anything else.
Mhm.
And then focusing also on books, and we'll do sort of focus on different chapters in books along the way. And in addition to that, that's mostly what it is. But I also have on my website, readforit.com, there is access to past blog posts and past information about the industry that I've written. That's another asset and sort of piece of the Read for It as well. So I've held on to that blog and Instagram and all of those things, even though I don't give it as much time as I used to.
Yeah, because you have other
Thanks.
a lot of things going on, which is not bad. So, since our last conversation, work in the entertainment industry has slowed down. People are having a hard time finding paid work. What advice would you have for those still looking to pursue a career in film and TV?
Yeah, it is definitely a tough time. And again, we're experiencing a lot of changes, and I think you're seeing that everywhere. There's a little bit of a tendency, I feel like, for us to be in a little bit of a bubble in the Southeast and sort of think we're the only ones that are experiencing the slowdown, but the
Mhm.
slowdown is everywhere, for sure. It's not just here. And there's lots of different reasons for it, but certainly one of the reasons is because the streaming services have realized that that's not quite as lucrative as they thought that it was going to be when they realized they actually have to pay people
Mhm.
residuals and
Mhm.
things, and a decent salary. So I think that just the mathematical numbers for streaming services, um, everyone's realized that that is not working to the positive. And so we're sort of starting to edge more back to commercial. I don't know how far that will go. There are probably people in the industry that know more about that than I do. But I think you are starting to see more commercials sort of come back into the streaming services in those services that we are watching and using. So that's definitely a piece of it. I also think we had a few years where we overproduced on content. So
Mhm.
there was almost more content than people could absorb or watch or see, and view. And as a result of that, people have pulled back on green lighting projects, writing checks. There's no blank checks being written these days, right? But
Right.
it's much harder than it was, 5 or 6 years ago to get something greenlit and to move forward with a production. So that's gonna, like the pendulum, right? That's gonna even itself out some. So I think that we will see some of that work return. I don't know that we'll ever be as busy as some of the years when I was working as an agent we were, that I was just felt underwater as an agent with all the projects and submissions we were doing, which was amazing, but made everybody kind of feel like they were getting, like tumbling through, the lazy river, and not controlling anything that was happening, right? So
Right.
certainly we've slowed down. It's a tough time to get into, I think, the business, but it goes back to the basic principles that we've already talked about, which is training is first, training is most important. So, if your response is, I don't have the money to get the training, then go out and get the job that helps you to pay to get the training. Because unless you're an exceptional actor, you're not going to book the project. Right. So you've got to continue work on those acting chops. If you're coming to town and you don't have an agent, then you're going to have to do some heavy lifting to get there. Again, a decade ago, uh, we were bringing actors in just like, we don't have enough on our roster. We don't have enough on our
Mhm.
roster. And then all of a sudden, everyone sort of ended up with too many on their roster to be able to serve them well. And so a lot of the bigger agencies cut back in large degree on their talent numbers. More agents have come in town, certainly, but there's still an awful lot of people here looking for agents. And that means, and most of the agents now are referral only in terms
Mhm.
of actors in, right? So that becomes really challenging as well, because you've got to have somebody that writes that email and says, yeah, I think this actor is great. At the end of the day, you're still looking for an agent that wants that doesn't feel like they have enough of whomever you are on their roster. And that could take you a while to get to that. So it's just about going out there and doing the hard work, not losing sight of that, taking the wins where you can get them, but also knowing that if all of your joy is wrapped up into this one single thing, then it's going to be hard for you to be successful, because a well-rounded human being is going to be a better artist that has a variety of interests in their life.
Yeah, I agree. So this kind of ties into our whole entire interview. But do you have any gems? GEM stands for Great Educational Moments with Movers and Shakers that you would like to share with our readers and viewers.
Sure, gems that I would, I think that I can't remember, Mandisa, if I said this when I was on the last interview. So if it's a repeat, forgive me, but it's my go-to and I really believe in it.
Okay.
I believe that I'm an artist, you're an artist. Most of the people working in the industry in some capacity, we're artists, right? And again, I like to say artists with a big A. And that means that it's hard for me not to be artistic in almost everything I do.
Hmm.
Everything from, choosing towels in my bathroom to, writing a short or directing, my artistic hands are going to be on that, right? But like everything in life, we have limited bandwidth in terms of what we can give to it. So I think one of the most important things is that you choose carefully where you spend that bandwidth and where you place it and where you put it. And that becomes just fundamental to your success. So, what exactly does that mean? That means that you can't do all of the things.
Mm.
I actually love pottery. I love to do that. I like visual arts, but I also know that if I give my focus and attention to that, that there's going to be something else that doesn't get my attention, my focus. So if there's a piece of advice I can give, it's acknowledge that bandwidth, that creative bandwidth that you have, and be careful about who and where you give that to because it's a
Mm.
limited resource. So I do a lot of things, you do a lot of things. We can all acknowledge that we wear multiple hats, but I've also got to understand what it means to say no.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's really hard. If you're like on the bike and you're speeding along and you're like, I'm there, I'm killing it. I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And you're doing all of these things. At some point, there's probably going to be some burnout on that, right? So again, figuring out what you can do. And I'm better at that now than I used to be. I'm better now at going, you know what? It's okay if I sit here for this hour and don't do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's okay if I take time to eat my lunch and I'm not on my phone doing work while I do it. So finding that work-life balance is key to your success as an actor, because if you haven't found a way to do that, then you're probably not going to get to where you want to be. And that's all again about appropriating and kind of figuring out that work-life balance piece of it and that bandwidth.
Yes, I like what you said about the bath towels. I'm that way with my clothes. It's because
Right?
the artistic side's gonna come out no matter
Somewhere.
what. Yeah,
Yep.
my hair, I consider it artsy. How I dress a lot
Yes.
of times, it just comes out like I'll just throw something together, and people be like, I like that. I just kind of throw it together, and they're like, sure. I'm like, well, I'm an artist, so it's gonna come
Yes.
that way. So yes, thank you so much. And I not sure if you did share that, but that was a great gem. So thank you.
You.
So how can people connect with you?
Probably the best way to connect for me is you can get to me through my readforit.com, my website. You can also follow me on Instagram. I've got my account at Read For It. I also have my at Susan G. Reid that is available on Instagram. That's mostly what I use. I don't use a whole lot of other social media. I'm not great at the social media piece of things. I say admittedly. You can also reach out to me through Georgia State University, because all you got to do is go on the website and look me up. And so you can also contact me that way.
Yes, I agree. Social media can be very overwhelming. Very, very overwhelming.
Right.
I'm on TikTok and I have people requesting me on another app. I'm like, I didn't even set up that up. Like how? And I didn't know until my daughter told me that if you have TikTok, you are automatically on like Lemonade. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is.
Right, right. I just can't. Again, it's if I give to that, what am I not giving to something else, right? So
Right.
you just gotta make the choices that make sense for you, right? At the end of
Yes.
the day.
Yes. So thank you so much for answering a few more questions for us. And I'd love to hear about your updates. And
Thank you.
thank you for joining us. I am Mandisa Johnson with Atlanta Film and TV. Be sure to stay tuned for more conversations by following us on Instagram at Atlanta Film and TV and by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Atlanta Film and TV. Have a great day.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to stop this recording. Okay, there we go.